In a turbulent period of Israel's history, when the Philistines exercised harsh dominion over the land, the story of Samson's birth unfolds. Endowed with a divine destiny, Samson is born under a solemn promise to become a Nazirite, consecrated to God's service among the people of Israel. Bread of hope woven by the hands of the Almighty, granting him unparalleled strength and entrusting him with a grand mission. The Book of Judges captures this epic narrative, revealing the extraordinary deeds of this sacred hero. The Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hands of the Philistines 40 years. Judges 13 verse 1. Amid this oppression, we are introduced to Manoah, whose wife bore the anguish of barrenness. There was a certain man from Zorah, the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah. His wife was barren and had no children. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, "You are barren and have had no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son." Judges 13, 2-3. This event echoes earlier biblical narratives, paralleling the miraculous births of Isaac in the Old Testament and John the Baptist in the New Testament. The birth of this promised child carried the crucial mission of delivering Israel from the yoke of the Philistines. However, with this divine purpose came a unique condition. Unlike any other judge before him, the angel instructed Manoah's wife to raise the child according to the Nazirite vow, consecrated promise detailed in the book of Numbers. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when either a man or a woman makes a special vow, the vow of a Nazirite, to separate himself to the Lord, he shall abstain from wine and similar drink, not drinking vinegar made from wine, nor from any other fermented drink. He shall neither drink grape juice nor eat fresh grapes or raisins. All the days of his separation, he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, from seed to skin. No razor shall touch his head until the period of his dedication to the Lord is over. He shall be holy, letting the locks of his hair grow long." Numbers 6:1-5. This sacred commitment involved abstaining from wine and beer, as well as refraining from cutting one's hair. Interestingly, the angel also instructed Manoah's wife to avoid consuming wine or beer during pregnancy and to abstain from impure foods, restrictions that signaled the early consecration of her child to God's service as a Nazirite, even before his birth. Although she received this celestial message directly, the woman shared the instructions with her husband. Manoah then prayed to the Lord, saying, "O Lord, please, let the man of God whom you sent come to us again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born." Judges 13:8. God listened to Manoah's prayer, and the angel of the Lord returned to the woman as she sat in the field, though her husband was not with her. The woman hurried to inform her husband, and Manoah followed her back to the angel. Manoah asked, "Are you the man who spoke to my wife?" And the angel replied, "I am." Judges 13:11. Manoah then said, "Now let your words come true. What is to be the rule for the boy's life and his work?" The angel replied, "Everything I have said to your wife must be followed." Judges 13, verse 12-13. Perhaps mistaking the visitor for a mere man sent by the Lord, Manoah offered hospitality, suggesting he stay while they prepared a young goat for a feast. The visitor accepted the offer to stay but refused to eat, instructing that a burnt offering would be more appropriate. When Manoah placed the offering upon the rock, as requested, something miraculous occurred. The visitor ascended in the flames and departed into the heavens. Witnessing this wonder, Manoah and his wife fell with their faces to the ground. In a moment of fear, Manoah recognized the divine presence, expressing concern that they would die for having seen the face of God. Thus, he correctly identified the angel of the Lord as God himself. Then Manoah took a young goat, together with the grain offering, and sacrificed it on a rock to the Lord. The Lord did an amazing thing while Manoah and his wife watched. As the flame blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. Judges 13:19-20. Afterward, the angel of the Lord did not appear again, and Manoah realized that it was indeed the angel of the Lord. Manoah said to his wife, "We shall surely die, for we have seen God." But his wife reassured him, saying, "The Lord had meant to kill us. He would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands, or shown us all these things, or now announced to us such a promise. Judges 13:22-23. In time, the woman bore a son and named him Samson. The young man grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Mahaneh-dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. Judges 13:24-25. God poured his blessings upon Samson, and the Spirit of the Lord began to guide him, preparing him for the great work that lay ahead. However, despite being consecrated from birth, Samson made questionable decisions throughout his journey, revealing the complexity of divine intervention in human life. His visit to Timnah and his desire to marry a young Philistine woman surprised his parents, who tried to counsel him wisely, warning him against union with someone outside the people of God. Yet, they were unaware that Samson's interest in this specific woman was part of the divine plan, a catalyst for an imminent confrontation with the Philistine. Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, "I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife." His father and mother replied, "Isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife?" But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me. She is the right one for me." His parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, for at that time they were ruling over Israel. Judges 14:1-4. During his journey to Timnah, where his future wife lived, Samson encountered a formidable challenge. A young lion attacked him. At this crucial moment, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him with irresistible power, and Samson, without any weapon, tore the lion apart with his bare hands. This extraordinary feat was powerful evidence that he had been chosen and empowered by God for a supernatural mission. Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands as he might have torn a young goat. But he told neither his father nor his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson. Judges 14:5-7. At a banquet likely serving as his engagement feast, Samson challenged the Philistines with a riddle. The prize for solving the riddle within a week would be 30 linen garments, a sign of honor and prestige in biblical times. Reflecting on his recent experience of confronting the lion and finding honey inside the carcass, Samson posed the riddle. Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. Judges 14:14. The Philistines, unable to solve the riddle after 3 days, became furious. They threatened to kill Samson's wife, who was also a Philistine, and all her family unless she could extract the answer from him. Terrified at the prospect of losing her life and that of her loved ones, she wept before Samson for 7 days, until he could no longer bear her distress. At her insistence, Samson revealed the answer, and the Philistines knew they had obtained it through her. Driven by the Spirit of the Lord, Samson killed 30 Philistine men in another city to fulfill the agreement, the 30 sets of clothing. After this incident, he returned home, but his wife was no longer with him. In a subsequent episode, Samson caused further devastation to the Philistines. When he attempted to visit his wife, he was stopped by his father-in-law, who assumed that Samson no longer wanted her. In retaliation, Samson destroyed the Philistines' crops by tying the tails of 300 foxes together with torches and releasing them into the fields. After a while, at the time of wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife, taking a young goat with him. He said, "I want to go to my wife's room," but her father would not let him go in. "I was so sure you hated her," he said, "that I gave her to your companion. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead." Samson said to them, "This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them." So he went out and caught 300 foxes and tied them tail to tail in pairs. He then fastened a torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the shocks and standing grain together with the vineyards and olive groves. Judges 15:1-5. Samson's life, though steeped in divine empowerment, was also marked by personal flaws and poor decisions that ultimately led to his downfall. His marriage to a Philistine woman, for instance, was ill-advised, even though it was part of God's mysterious plan to confront the Philistines. Samson's unbridled passions and impulsive behavior highlight the tension between divine will and human agency in his story. A key turning point in Samson's life involved another Philistine woman named Delilah, who eventually betrayed him. She coaxed him into revealing the secret of his strength, his Nazirite vow, specifically that no razor had ever touched his head. When Delilah had his hair cut while he slept, Samson lost his strength and was captured by the Philistines, who gouged out his eyes and made him grind grain in prison. However, even in his weakest moment, God's purpose for Samson had not yet been fully realized. As his hair began to grow back, so did his strength. During a Philistine celebration in their temple to Dagon, Samson prayed to God to grant him strength one final time, allowing him to bring down the temple by toppling its supporting pillars, killing himself along with thousands of Philistines. Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. Judges 16:30. Samson's story is a complex tapestry woven with themes of divine intervention, human weakness, and redemption. Though flawed, Samson remains a significant figure in the biblical narrative, demonstrating how God can use even the most imperfect individuals to accomplish his divine purposes. Another lesson from this story is that humility and trust in God's provision lead to unexpected blessing. Moses' reluctance and humility before God demonstrated that true leadership doesn't rely on one's own strength or abilities, but on God's guidance. Despite his initial doubts, Moses' trust in God's plan resulted in him becoming a central figure in the deliverance of the Israelites, showing that when we place our trust in God, He equips us beyond our limitations.